Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the show. It is Monday, November the 29th, so this will be releasing on Tuesday, November the 30th. A few things happening in the world today. First off, you guys have probably seen that, before I go into this, actually, if you like this shirt that I'm wearing, this says Free Mind, with a snazzy American flag on the sleeve and the Just Work logo on the back. These will be available for pre-order very soon. Working on a few issues, unfortunately, on the back end due to supply chain stuff. A few colors weren't available. And so we're working on fleshing that out and figuring out where to maybe source those from or waiting for those to get in, I think. But yeah, the issues are very real, even if you're trying to make t-shirts right now. It's hard to get stuff. So, and of course, trying to get American made, but then, there's issues that hold up those manufacturers too, further up the chain. So anyway, these shirts will be coming soon. If you're watching the video, you can see the Free Mind logo on the front. And as always, we appreciate the support, or I guess God, words are hard, you guys. I appreciate the support. So anyway, I'll keep you guys updated on that. All right, the CEO of Twitter, Mr. Jack Dorsey, has stepped down today. And kind of crazy stuff went down. The stock, I think, started to shoot up, I guess because people were happy that he had resigned, and the SEC actually halted trading on Twitter stock, which is kind of interesting. It's always weird to me when these organizations like the SEC just sort of step in and intervene in free markets. It's like, why? Let what happens happen, So, and I guess I was reading somewhere else that, Jack is the CEO of Square also, and I guess the stock for Square went down, presumably because people are upset that he's going to have more time to focus just on that endeavor. I don't know. But so he's stepping down. He's being replaced with Parag Agrawal. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but he is the former CTO, Chief Technological Officer or Chief Technology Officer of Twitter. And there's been a little bit of controversy out in the Twitter sphere on the internet about this guy already. Apparently he's made some kind of controversial tweets and statements about free speech and about racism and stuff. So one that I was able to dig up, and look, you don't know people's intentions when they say certain things, and far be it from me to speak to what someone meant or what they were talking about a decade ago, which this tweet that people are talking about from this guy is from like 11 years ago. And I'll just say, for everyone on the right who is bringing this up and tossing it around, you got to remember that we're supposed to be the ones, or you're supposed to be the ones, or whatever. I am opposed to this as well, but just speaking to people on the right, and I guess I can be considered on the right. Maybe I'm just being reluctant to say that. We're the ones who are against digging up old tweets on people. But, as soon as the tides turn, here you guys are digging up old tweets on people. So be careful with that kind of stuff. But anyway, here's what the tweet said. If they're not going to make a distinction between Muslims and extremists, then why should I distinguish between white people and racists? So who knows what exactly the intent was there. It sounds like he's saying that obviously not all Muslims are extremists, just like obviously not all white people are racist. But it's interesting that he chose to draw the parallel between white people and racists, because there are racists of all colors, right? So a lot of people are talking about this particular tweet today, and I would just remember this is from 11 years ago. Who knows what it was in reference to? it could be disturbing if interpreted a certain way, maybe not if interpreted other ways. So anyway, folks are talking about this. And then also there was another statement that he made that folks are talking about, where he essentially said that Twitter shouldn't be so much bound by the First Amendment and should focus less on free speech and more on just creating like a healthy, safe, public conversation. So that to me is a little alarming if that's his view truly. That's more alarming to me than the first one, talking about white people and racism and Muslims and extremism and everything. But if he doesn't think that Twitter should essentially focus on freedom of speech, then that can be an issue. And we all know how this tends to play out, especially in big tech. Generally, the ones being censored are the ones who are on the opposite side of the political spectrum from those in power in these big tech institutions, or entities rather. So we'll see where that goes, but that can definitely, or is definitely concerning, but who knows, right? This is all new. This is all very hot off the press, and everybody's talking about it right now, but we'll see. And again, it really is, just one social media platform. And if it ends up being that it goes down the crapper, then so be it. Just don't use Twitter anymore. And that's something that I believe I've mentioned before on here, especially talking about my Instagram getting disabled when it was disabled for a time. If you are someone who is legitimately worried about this because you've put sort of all your eggs in the Twitter basket or whatever, and it's your primary platform that you've used to grow on, then maybe rethink that. Maybe diversify a little bit, be on other platforms. You can never hedge too much, especially in the age of censorship and canceling people and all of that. Also, I need to apologize. You guys might hear some background noise, some kids yelling and stuff. There's a martial arts class right outside of the studio here in the gym, and you might hear some of that in the background. Don't worry, it is just kids in a class. It's not anybody being tortured or anything like that. So I apologize if you guys hear a little bit of that. So the reason Jack gave was, it was pretty basic. He said he's ready to move on, or he thinks rather that Twitter is ready to move on from its founders. So whatever that means, who knows? But I did, in my research today, I was looking at the old video from when Tim Pool went on Joe Rogan with Jack Dorsey and I forget her last name, but I think her first name was Vijaya, and she was, I believe, head of safety policy or something like that over at Twitter. But anyway, Tim asked her straight up, or really asked both of them straight up, and this was a couple years ago, so coronavirus wasn't even really a thing yet, specifically if they would silence or censor people who are like anti-vax. And of course, he's talking just in the context of anti-vax as we knew it before the pandemic, those who just chose not to vaccinate their children and were opposed to vaccines for various reasons. But Tim asked about this because they were talking about, what do you decide to censor and what do you not decide to censor? And they said very clearly, no, we would not censor that. So it's just kind of ironic and interesting to see just how wrong that was, because here we are, a couple years later, and they're very clearly censoring anything that they deem to be, quote, misinformation about the vaccine, or about COVID in general, which of course many times over has ended up in many circumstances being true ultimately. So that was just kind of ironic and funny that Tim had brought that up, and this was before the whole age of COVID and vaccines and everything. So anyway, that's Jack Dorsey stepping down from Twitter. I don't know. I guess he's going to stay involved at Square, but we'll see. Obviously, other stuff in the news, the Omicron variant, super scary. Omicron variant from South Africa. So there's a few things we know about this already. First off, it's more mild than the Delta variant. And that, I think, is very important to talk about. Okay, so, and this generally happens with viruses as they evolve, they become less virulent, right? So the symptoms aren't as intense even as Delta. They're quite mild from what we're hearing from over there in South Africa. And yeah, I believe they've already found the Omicron variant in, I want to say Canada maybe. So it's going to end up in the U.S. if it's not here yet already. But I think that the media is really making a big fuss about this, and they shouldn't. They're just driving more fear and panic unnecessarily. And really, the only reason folks are just a little bit concerned is because there are so many mutations, specifically with the spike protein sequence for this particular variant, that it might affect the vaccine's ability to provide protection against this. Now, obviously, we know that the vaccines wane in their efficacy anyway. They decline in how protective they are over time anyway. And obviously, they don't prevent you from getting COVID to begin with. They just mitigate your symptoms. So the bottom line is, it looks like this variant is quite mild. It might be more resistant to the vaccine, but I think it's just important to accept the fact that you might end up getting COVID, and you need to have a treatment plan in place whether you're vaccinated or not. I mean, that's the bottom line. The fact that people like the governor of New York are already talking about implementing new mask mandates and things like that due to this variant, there hasn't even been a case in New York yet, and they're already pushing this stuff. I mean, that's pretty preposterous. It's just again, it's more panic, it's more fear. It's honestly just kind of crazy. But at this point, what are we going to expect, right? It's par for the course. You're seeing the UK just today, the health secretary of the UK pushing for 3 months between vaccine booster shots now instead of 6 months. So they're still pushing for this stuff. And that really blows my mind, because in the UK specifically, the vaccinated are the majority of hospitalizations. I mean, the vaccine is being largely ineffective there at preventing even extreme cases, hospitalizations, all of that. And they're still gung-ho on the vaccine. I mean, I think at this point, in any population of people, you're well aware the vaccine exists, and you're well aware that you can go get it. And once you've established that, I mean, what else can you do that doesn't cross the line of authoritarianism and forcing people to take these vaccines? I mean, I think we just have to leave it alone. People know they have vaccinations available to them. People know they have treatments available to them. Just make sure you put out the information and stop with the fear-mongering and pushing of these narratives and trying to scare people and alienate people and call them names and all of this. So it's just never going to stop unless we stop, okay? And as simple as that sounds, it's the truth. I mean, Africa, for example, I think the continent-wide case rate in the population is like, or the continent-wide vaccination rate rather, is like 6% or something. It's super low. And COVID hasn't been a problem there. So, we've got to stop freaking out. We just have to stop freaking out. Obviously, there are a lot of conspiracy theories floating around, people saying that they're introducing this new variant because of the Ghislaine Maxwell trial, or they're introducing it so that they can have an excuse to push more lockdowns on people. Whatever it is, and whatever you believe, I happen to be more on the side of, it just happens to be a new variant that has evolved out of, rapid mutation and viral replication. It doesn't change anything. Get vaccinated if you want to get vaccinated. Don't if you don't. make sure either way that you have a treatment plan in place, and that you once you get COVID and you test positive, you know that you're going to do A, B, and C, and here's my plan, and I'm ready to rock and roll. That was the most important thing that I did, and it made all the difference for myself and my family. When we got COVID, which was just a couple months ago, maybe a month and a half, something like that, maybe 2 months, which very likely was the Delta variant. We didn't get the viral genome tested to see, but it's very likely that was the Delta variant based on kind of the propagation of that variant throughout the U.S. And I've talked about it before. I had a plan, set it right into action. I had like a day of symptoms that were pretty, not even bad, but one day of strongly noticeable symptoms, I'll put it that way. It still wasn't even as bad as when I've had the flu in the past. And then after that, I recovered, and I tested negative within the week. So you just got to have a plan. You got to have a plan, whether it's monoclonal antibodies combined with other things or just whatever it is. Just make sure you have a plan. I followed the FLCCC protocol to the T. Zinc, quercetin, vitamin C, ivermectin, monoclonal antibodies. I did the whole thing, and I was just good. I'm also pretty healthy, work out, eat clean-ish most of the time. Same with my wife. And then our daughter, she got it, and it barely affected her at all. It was like we didn't even treat her with anything, and she was good in a day or two. Just, and that's how it is with kids for the most part, kids who are healthy. And our daughter is extremely healthy. So anyway, don't buy into the fear-mongering. Don't let the Omicron variant scare you. Nothing changes. Make sure you have a plan. Make sure you're prepared. Jussie Smollett's trial started today, as well as Ghislaine Maxwell's. So big day for criminals or potential criminals starting their trials. If you guys remember Jussie Smollett, this was, 2 years ago now, 2019, something like that. He basically faked a hate crime against himself, allegedly, where he like hired these two black guys to pose as MAGA white supremacists or whatever, and they like put a noose around his neck and apparently dumped some kind of liquid on him and told him this is MAGA country while he's walking around in downtown Chicago at like, I don't know what time it was. It was like after midnight going to Subway apparently. So the whole story was just absolutely preposterous. And you guys have probably seen Dave Chappelle's joke about it in his special. And it was just really sad. It's honestly sad that it's come to that, where you have folks faking hate crimes against themselves. And apparently the reason of this was because he wasn't satisfied with how much he was getting paid as a celebrity actor in the series Empire. So you want to talk about privilege. The guy was getting $65K an episode, and he just thought that wasn't enough. So he staged a hate crime against himself. This is the world we live in. We've got it that good. We've got it that good where, oh man, only 65 grand per episode. I'm going to have to create a whole hate crime hoax against myself to bring attention to myself and hopefully get paid more. So just a crazy situation, a sad situation, pretty gross, because racism is not something you should take lightly. And all these scenarios where people fake these hate crimes against themselves, it's just, it's awful. And they're going to trial starting today. The last update I saw was they had the 12 jurors selected, and they didn't allow any press into the courtroom today, but apparently that was because during the jury selection process, it was too cramped of quarters for them to properly social distance and have press in there. So I'm assuming they're going to televise the trial once it's up and running. I hope so, because I'll definitely be paying attention to that. But so Jussie Smollett starts today. Obviously, Ghislaine Maxwell started today. That is not going to be live streamed or televised. We talked about that in the last episode because it's a federal case. supposedly, but there's already all kinds of stuff circulating about the trial, and I need to do some deep dives into some of the information before I really talk about it. So we'll be covering that more. The last thing that I saw when I was just browsing through stuff earlier was that I think she's going to take the stand, Ghislaine is, to defend herself. So that's interesting. Obviously, we won't get to see any of that. But people are already basically complaining that some of the most important potential victims or witnesses aren't being called to testify. I don't know. Again, I need to just do more reading and more studying on this. I feel like this is something that I can do a really deep dive on and have a whole episode about, maybe even bring in my buddy Josh, who covered the Rittenhouse trial. I'm going to bring him in to cover Ahmaud Arbery anyway. Maybe he'll do a Ghislaine Maxwell deep dive with me. Josh, if you're listening, I hope you'll consider that. But so 2 big trials starting today. Jussie Smollett, or as Dave Chappelle says, Jussie Smollett, and Ghislaine Maxwell. Last thing I wanted to talk about, lighten the mood a little bit. I feel like we've had some rough stuff happening lately, man. It's like every day there's something to be depressed about. And, I just thought this was actually a kind of a cool thing. And I'm a big fan of Elon Musk. I know that there are people who hate him or who don't like him. I have massive admiration for him. I've read his biography and I've followed him for many years. I just think he's an incredibly impressive human. And so he's teamed up with NASA to basically launch this rocket to go nudge an asteroid. And let me read this because it's pretty cool and pretty fascinating stuff. So it's called DART. The mission is DART, D-A-R-T, which stands for something. Let's see here. Where is it? The Double Asteroid Redirection Test, DART mission. So essentially what they're going to do is they're going to launch this rocket. It's going to go to this asteroid and nudge it a little bit, and apparently enough to where it'll be detectable. So they'll be able to see pretty easily whether they've actually achieved what they're trying to do. But basically, it's to get to a point where if we do have an asteroid approaching the Earth, we can send a ship out to go and redirect it to protect a catastrophic event from happening, like what happened with the dinosaurs. And Musk actually tweeted out a funny tweet when NASA announced the launch. Musk retweeted it and said, "Avenge the dinosaurs!" ! So pretty cool thing. I mean, this is awesome stuff. We've reached the point with technology where we can actually send, for lack of a better word, send a spaceship out to go redirect an asteroid that's approaching the Earth. So this is apparently an asteroid that's about 530 feet in diameter. They call it a moonlet, I guess. So it was a tiny moon. It's named Dimorphos. So they're going to send it out there. It's the SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket. And it's going to nudge it a little bit to redirect its path. And I guess then we'll know that we're basically able to protect the planet from asteroids, which I think is pretty sweet. And they launched it on Wednesday of last week. So it's Monday today, November 29th. They launched it last week on Wednesday. And it's not going to get there until between September 26th and October 1st of next year of 2022. So essentially a year of traveling to get there. So hopefully if there's an asteroid approaching the Earth, we know with enough advance notice that we can spend a year getting our rocket to it, I guess. But yeah, so keep an eye on that. I think that's pretty interesting stuff. Like I said, these days you can get wrapped up in negativity and politics and just the divisiveness pushed by the corporate media. So here's something a little more lighthearted. With Elon Musk teaming up with NASA to launch their planetary defense mission. So if you go Google it, there's all kinds of articles on it and cool information on it. But yeah, so that's going on as well. Some pretty cool stuff. And with that, guys, I did have one other thing I wanted to talk about, but I think I'm going to table that for tomorrow because I want to end this on a positive note. So we'll keep it short, we'll keep it sweet, and I'll talk to you guys again tomorrow. I'm lining up quite a few guests right now, so bear with me. I'll have some more people on, so you won't just be listening to me talking all the time by myself. So that'll be coming soon. And until next time, my friends, keep your minds free.